Hello, welcome to BM6611 Managing Brands and our session on designing marketing programs to build brand equity. In this session, we will look at three elements of marketing programs: the product or service itself, pricing, and distribution channel strategies. And in the next session, we'll look at the fourth element of marketing programs: integrated marketing communications. As always, you can start and stop this video as often as you like and listen out for things that I'll ask you to do in preparation for the class sessions linked to this topic. The reading for the topic, the compulsory paper, is by Yu, Donthu and Lee, and it's a paper from 2000 which was published in the Academy of Marketing Science, an examination of selected marketing mix elements and brand equity. And as always, there are two other additional papers that you can read if you want more depth and more detail of information. So let's start by going back a little bit to Keller's customer-based brand equity model. And down the right-hand side of this pyramid that you should be getting quite familiar with now, we have the various stages of brand development, going from identity at the bottom through building deep and broad brand awareness to create salience. At the second level, brand meaning. At the third level, brand response. And at the top level, brand relationships. And the corresponding branding objectives are down the left-hand side of the pyramid. And if you remember, got those starting at the very bottom, as I already said, the creation of both deep and broad brand awareness, so that the customer knows who the brand is, when and why to think of the brand. The branding objective at the second stage relates to brand positioning, to the creation of those all-important points of parity that give the brand the right to compete in its product category or its service sector, and the points of difference, a key platform of Keller's view of customer-based brand equity, that brands not only need points of parity that make them as good as their competition, but they also need points of difference, ideally unique points of difference. At the third level, brand response, the branding objective is to create positive reactions between the customer and the brand, to bring the customer into the brand. And at the final stage, the objective is to create loyalty, intense and active loyalty, both attitudinal loyalty, the customer thinking that this brand, that they want to continue with the brand in the future, that it is the best brand for them, and also behavioural loyalty, where that attitude turns into purchase behaviour. So we'll look now at how the product itself, pricing, and distribution channel strategies help to achieve these stages of brand development, help to achieve these individual branding objectives that lead to strong customer-based brand equity. We have to differentiate in defining things between what are the so-called traditional marketing activities, the 4 Ps, the marketing mix: product, price, place, and promotion, what I've referred to here as integrated marketing communication, because the term promotion is very misleading. It makes people think purely of sales promotion. And in fact, there are many, many tools within the so-called promotion mix. And so the term integrated marketing communication is much, much more appropriate. But that's really the topic for next week. But alongside these traditional marketing mix activities that have been written about in textbooks and discussed in academic journal articles for many, many decades, we have some newer developments which enable us to make marketing programs interactive, to create an interactive two-way relationship between a brand and a customer. And there are many, many ways in which personalised marketing can be carried out, using big data to understand what customers want and therefore target relevant messages to them. That's not a new thing. Again, that's been around for many, many decades. But the precision with which needs and wants and interests can be identified and targeted is perhaps increasing as a result of digital tools. So personalised marketing requires both data to understand what the customer wants and a series of digital communications and other tools so that the personalised offer can be directed to the right customer at the right time in the right place. And perhaps a newer development leading to interactive marketing programs, which is particularly relevant in distribution channels, is the incorporation of virtual reality and augmented reality to create, using only online or the mobile channels, a real experience for the customer, a 360-degree moving 3D experience, just as they might get in a store. So VR and AR lead to things like smart changing rooms online, where you can take a picture of yourself and superimpose it with garments, and all sorts of other tools and techniques, avatars, smart shopping agents, etc., to personalize and to bring to life the online digital experience. The marketing mix or the marketing program that is developed for a brand should be designed to enhance brand awareness, to create brand awareness perhaps in the first place if the brand is new, to build on it and enhance it if the brand has been around for a while, and to establish and maintain the desired brand image. And it's important that all of the possible tools, traditional, analog, newer, digital, are considered and used in putting together a marketing program. The blend of tools is important. So the product strategy should identify which specific tangible and intangible benefits are going to be delivered by the product. Most people buy a product as a means to an end. The old example that is often used is you don't buy a drill because you want a drill, you buy a drill because you want a hole. The hole is the intangible benefit, drilling a hole in a piece of wood or in your wall so that you can hang a picture or a set of shelves. And so it's important that marketeers don't get too hung up on the tangible features of their product. They need to maintain in clear sight the actual intangible benefits that the customer is looking for, and make sure that the product delivers those at best in class, and ideally also offers some additional unique features and functionality that deliver clear and meaningful benefits to the customer. The product strategy can also add value for the customer through harnessing customer information through a customer database, which will track customers' past purchasing behaviour, incorporate information from market research or from customer interviews that have been conducted in other ways, and use that to make sure that customers are kept informed about new product developments that are of interest and relevance to them, that they are provided with add-on support packages, training, education, free delivery, installation, etc., that are relevant to them. Knowing the customer through information enables value to be added in meaningful ways. If we think about pricing, one of the important contributions that marketeers make to business is championing the customer and understanding value. And this is critically important to setting the right price for a product. You have to balance price cost of production, cost of marketing, cost of distribution, quality, what the competition is doing, but also you have to understand the customer's perception of the value that they will get from the product. And actually, it's very easy to underprice products if you just look at how much it costs to make them, distribute them, etc., and failing to take into account perceptions of value. Thirdly, we look at channel strategy. And here we come across the terms push and pull. And it is important to blend these in the channel strategy. Channel push is where intermediaries in the channel, such as wholesalers, cash and carries, retailers, agents, dealerships, are incentivized to take the product and push it on to the next level in the distribution channel. And a pull strategy is where marketing effort is directed at the end customer. It might be a consumer customer or a business-to-business customer, so that they will demand the product and pull it through the channel. And you need both push and pull for channels to work effectively. And of course, in modern distribution channel environments, there is more than one channel that is used. And organizations need to develop a multi-channel strategy using a mix of traditional offline bricks and mortar channels, stores of various kinds, online and mobile channels to facilitate what are called customer journeys. Customers engaging in different parts of their purchasing process and moving seamlessly from online to offline to mobile to back to online, etc., across a range of physical and digital brand touchpoints, such as websites, stores, etc. Let's focus now just on product strategies. So here, the aim of the game is to ensure that the customer clearly perceives the quality of the product and the value that they are going to get from the product. And ideally, the product will offer them added value over and above the basic functional value of the product itself. So the basic functional value that you might get from a car is moving from A to B, the ability to drive yourself from one place to another. But there can be other values that you get from a product beyond its basic functions. Emotional values, experiential values. You feel good while you're driving the car. You feel safe. You feel excited. You're getting extra benefits beyond the basic. And this is critically important in ensuring that customer-based brand equity is built. The brand has to create the feeling that it offers more than the competition. These can be real, extra, added values, or imagined ones that are brought to life through advertising, through atmospherics, etc. But perception is the key, the customer's perception. The customer needs to perceive that they are getting something more, something different, something valuable from the brand. And there are examples at the bottom there: Apple, Virgin Atlantic and Starbucks. And for our next in-class session, I'd like you to think about the values that each of these brands delivers to the customer, the functional values, the emotional values. What are the benefits that each brand creates for the customer? Are they real? Are they imagined? Or are they a bit of both? So bring your thoughts to our class session. And of course, the objective behind having an effective product strategy is to create sustainable competitive advantage. And that comes through these added values that the product or the service provides to the customer. If there is no added value, It's very, very hard to see that there can be any competitive advantage beyond being the very, very cheapest in the market. And it takes a great deal of effort to continually be the cheapest. It is not necessarily the most effective way to run a business. You have to have a constant eye on cost control, and you cannot really innovate in any way beyond cost reduction. So it's quite a limiting strategy. So most organisations will seek to get their competitive advantage and sustain their competitive advantage through adding value. So again, for our next session, have a look at the brands at the bottom of the slide here. Have a think about where their competitive advantage comes from. Does it come from simply being cheap? Does it come from something else? Does it come from some tangible aspect or something intangible? And really think about how sustainable you think that competitive advantage is. How vulnerable are they to competition? How vulnerable are they to being copied? To what extent can they trademark or copyright or protect their product or service? And to what extent can it be matched or even superseded? How might they be beaten by completely different sorts of organisations coming from completely different product or service categories? So again, bring your thoughts to our class session. So sustaining competitive advantage is, of course, very, very reliant on the nature of the product or the service itself, and the company investing in technology, in innovation, in fostering a culture and a climate of innovation within the organisation so that good ideas can come to the fore and be capitalised on quickly. But the product or service itself is not the only way in which competitive advantage can be obtained and sustained. That also depends on the other elements of the marketing programme or the operational marketing mix, pricing and distribution channels. So let's think now about pricing. Price can, of course, be a critically important determinant of consumer choice. It's not always the only thing it's considered, but it is almost always considered to some extent or another when customers are thinking about alternatives in a particular product category. And price can be a critically important dimension of brand positioning. Does the product have a clear competitive differential advantage that consumers would be willing to pay more for in comparison to other alternatives in the marketplace? If that is the case, then you should use what's known as a price skimming or a premium pricing strategy. The term price skimming comes from the phrase to skim the cream off the market. And the rationale behind a price skimming or price premium pricing strategy is that if you have a product that is clearly better in some way than the competition, and if some consumers are able to pay a price differential, then you charge a high price, higher than market average price. And you bring in the least price sensitive consumers, the ones who really want this added value, these added benefits, and are able to pay for it. And over time, perhaps as the differential advantage that the product has is reduced slightly, as the competition maybe catches up a little bit, you gradually lower the price. And this is very much the strategy used by Apple. Each time a new iPhone or a new iPad or a new MacBook is introduced, it is introduced at a high price. And gradually over time, that price comes down and a newer model with added functionality, added benefits is introduced at the top price. The alternative, if you have a sound product, a product that does what it needs to do, but doesn't necessarily have a clear differential advantage, might be to go for market share, beating the competition on price. And this is referred to as a market penetration pricing strategy. So this is where the price is perhaps lower than the market average, lower than competition. And the objective here is to buy market share effectively, bring in customers and create market share as quickly as possible to become the established market leader with the largest market penetration as quickly as possible. And as a result, that acts as an entry barrier to competitors, making it harder for them to come in and compete. The decision of whether you go for a premium pricing or a penetration pricing strategy is critically important. And this is particularly important when a brand or product is new, because the choice is difficult to change after it has been made, particularly if you go for a market penetration pricing strategy. If you go for price skimming or premium pricing strategy, you can gradually over time, as part of a integrated product portfolio strategy with innovations constantly coming in, you can lower your price gradually over time. But if you start with a market penetration pricing strategy and a relatively low price, it is very, very, very hard to increase the price later on. And if you want to radically change the positioning and go for a higher price, higher quality positioning, it is very, very difficult to do. And you almost have to do that with a new brand, completely different brand that has different associations in the mind of the customer. Key components of the price setting decision, as I already mentioned, are the costs of the product, manufacturing it, the costs of delivering the service, the costs of distributing a product, advertising it, etc., and the value that is delivered to the customer, how much the product is worth to the customer, how much the customer is willing to pay. And we often think about how much the customer is willing to pay purely in monetary costs. And of course, that is important, but there are other kinds of costs too, which you might like to think of as sacrifices. When customers buy something, they are sacrificing their money, their time, their cognitive effort, their brain power, the amount of time they have to collect information on alternatives, evaluate that, read reviews, look at information, etc. And their behavioural or physical effort, the amount of time and effort that they have to spend visiting stores, visiting dealerships, going around different websites. So all of these 4 types of sacrifices need to be taken into consideration in pricing the product. And the brand, the product will be successful if the value is perceived as being more than the sum of these 4 costs. So value, if you like, can be described as an equation. Value equals the benefits to the customer minus the sacrifices that they have to make. And so value can be obtained by being cheap, but also by being quick, by saving the customer time and effort. Perhaps they're prepared to pay more for an alternative that is easier to use, that requires less effort, that's easier to buy. And so you can trade off these various sacrifices. But of course, the key thing is to start with the customer and to research what it is they're looking for, what their perceptions of effort, cognitive behavioural effort may be, their time availability, and then price the product accordingly. Thinking a little bit more about premium pricing. This is a price skimming strategy, setting a higher than average price. That might actually trigger demand, for example, where price is an indicator of quality. So if people don't know very much about a product, if they can't necessarily easily see how it works, if they're not an expert in its manufacture, for example, complex camera equipment or electronic equipment, where the average consumer is not an expert, then price can be taken as an indicator of quality. And if the consumer is looking for quality, highest quality available, then they will go for the higher priced alternatives in a market. And in most markets, there is a market segment that is responsive to top quality, that is looking for and prepared to pay for the offerings that are the very best quality. So just building on this, customers may be unsure of what they're buying. Again, if they don't necessarily understand how something works, or if they are new to purchasing this particular product or for the first time, and they may require reassurance about the quality, and they wouldn't necessarily be reassured with a very low price. That might lead them to think that the quality was inferior. Another situation where premium pricing leads to demand is where customers perceive that there are significant differences in quality between the various competitive offerings in a market. And some of them, as I said, are prepared to pay for quality. It's expensive, but it's worth it in the long run point of view. However, sometimes it's a bit more, a bit less rational than that, perhaps. And sometimes customers just want to be seen to be buying, to be owning, to be wearing, to be driving the most expensive offering in their market. And we've seen that brands are value expressive devices. We buy brands because of what we think they say about us. And there are certainly segments in most markets where people are attracted to the most expensive offerings because of what they think those brands say about them, about their status, about their position within society, about their worth. Okay, let's leave pricing now and move on to distribution channel strategy. And this is the manner by which a product or a service is sold and distributed. And it can have a very profound impact on the resulting customer-based brand equity and the ultimate success of a brand. So setting the channel strategy is critically important. And the channel strategy includes the design and the management of all of the different types of intermediaries, such as wholesalers, distributors, brokers, agents, retailers, etc. All of the parties who are involved in the movement of a product from its place of production to its place of consumption. And sometimes intermediaries are also involved in the movement of services from their point of creation to their point of use. So, for example, in the insurance market, insurance brokers are very important in bringing together underwriters who provide the insurance with customers who need the insurance. So when we are designing our distribution channel strategy, we've got a set of decisions that need to be made. First of all, what sort of channels are we actually going to use? How many channels do we need to reach our target customers? We talked already about multi-channel strategy, and these days multi-channel is the norm, where organisations use the online, offline and mobile channels to reach their target customers. Now, some organisations set up those channels in isolation from one another, acting as independent silos, almost like independent business units within the organisation. And that can work well in some market sectors and possibly in some parts of the world. But there's research evidence from a range of studies that shows that channel integration leads to ultimately more satisfied customers, better sales, and ultimately to more profit. And so the organisation needs to think about the functionality that is going to be offered in each channel and how that functionality might be integrated. So will the channels sell the same product range at the same prices? Will the product ranges be complementary? Will you be able to buy a product in one channel and return it in another? It's a sort of an easy, seamless movement. Will the branding be consistent across the channels? If the answer to all of these questions is yes, then the channel is more highly integrated, the channel system and structure is more highly integrated and likely to be more successful from a customer point of view because it's easier to use, and then ultimately from a sales, revenue and profit point of view because customers will return and customer loyalty will ensue. The next decision that needs to be considered relates to customer service. So who is going to work in each of these channels? What will the relationship be between actual human employees and digital chatbots, etc., and automated service assistants? What type of customer service needs to be offered? How much skill will be required and training? What kind of attitude of service employees is needed? And all of these things need to be thought of in relation to the positioning of the brand. In the service sector, service employees are the brand. The people, the crew in an aeroplane, the front of house employees in a hotel or a restaurant. As far as the customer is concerned, they are the brand. And so how they act, how they behave, how they are dressed, what they know, how they deal with customers, how they deal with problems, that sums up the customer's response to the brand. That brings the brand to life for the customer and creates the customer's response. So all of these things need to be considered, and this obviously needs to be thought of in relation to the positioning of the brand and the nature of the product or service that is being offered. Then we need to think about the facilities that will actually be offered to the customer in each channel. The types of facilities, so if we think about a hotel, for example, will there be a spa? How many restaurants will there be? Will there be different styles and price points of restaurants? Will there be an office centre? Will there be transportation that can take guests at their hotel into town and back? And the types of facilities that are offered in a channel affect and shape customer attitudes and also affect and shape their behaviour and ultimately the satisfaction that they have with the brand that has been delivered through the distribution channel. Atmospherics also need to be considered. These are perhaps easier to think about and conceptualise in the context of brick and mortar channels, but atmospherics are also very relevant in online channels also. What should buildings or websites look like and feel like? What colours should be used? What sorts of materials? What should be the functional flow in a service environment? What order should things be done in? How should customers be introduced into the service process? Where should they wait? Where should they sit? And all of these things don't just affect customers, the music that they hear, the smells, the signage, the furniture they have to sit on, but also has an effect on employee performance as well. So just thinking about McDonald's and comparing a McDonald's restaurant from the early 1980s with a contemporary McDonald's restaurant, you can see that the design, The types of materials, the colours, the layout are very different and create a very, very different image of the brand. So store atmospherics and channel atmospherics are critically important in supporting brand positioning. McDonald's restaurants have changed as the brand positioning has changed away from an emphasis on Ronald McDonald and chicken McNuggets and family fun and fried food to a more multicultural, multi-generational, everyday restaurant experience with a greater emphasis on health, a wider menu range. Of course, the burgers and fries are still sold, but the emphasis is on providing people with greater choice of food and just coffee if that's all they want, if they don't want to eat. And the style of restaurants is cleaner, fresher and more modern in keeping with that change of brand positioning. Other decisions that need to be made about channel strategies, well, first of all, relate to time access. How long will the channels be open? We're used to online channels being available 24/7, 365. But what about customer service? Will we be able to get customer service online during all the hours that the channel is actually operational? Or will customer service be only available through what would be considered more normal day-to-day, during the day office hours? What about shops? What about stores? How long will they stay open? How many days of the week? How many hours of the day? How long will people have to wait to collect an order? If they order online and want to pick it up in store, what will the length of waiting time be? How long will people have to wait for an appointment if they call up and ask to make an appointment with a hairdresser, a beautician, an architect, an engineer? Will they get an appointment that day, the next day, next week, next month? All of these time access questions need to be clearly defined in advance, again, in relation to the positioning of the brand. And sometimes more exclusive positioning strategies require reduced hours, longer time to wait, because that enhances the image of exclusivity, rarity, and the brand being special. Next, we have to decide on distribution intensity. And if you've studied marketing before, you may be familiar with the 3 distribution intensity strategies: intensive distribution, selective distribution, and exclusive distribution. And we'll look at the examples of these on the next slide. All of these elements communicate something about the brand, tell the consumer something about the positioning of the brand, the characteristics of the brand, the image of the brand. And so it is really important that the channel strategy is defined carefully. Intensive distribution means making a product available in as many distribution outlets and as many types of channels as possible. And this is the norm for what we would normally call fast-moving consumer goods or consumer packaged goods, the kind of things that you might buy in grocery stores. People are not going to want to wait or be prepared to travel very far to buy a tin of baked beans or a newspaper or some kitchen towel or even some fresh fruit and vegetables. They expect to be able to go to a wide range of different outlets fairly close to where they live to purchase these products. And so products that require intensive distribution need to be made available not just in grocery stores, but in petrol station, convenience shops, corner shops, vending machines, etc., to make it very, very easy for the customer to get hold of them. Selective distribution is used for products that you wouldn't expect to find on every street corner, but equally you wouldn't expect to have to travel many, many miles to buy unless you lived in a very outlying rural area. So most middle of the range, ordinary, everyday clothing you would expect to find through a strategy of selective distribution. Not every website sells jeans. Some websites sell jeans, some stores sell jeans. So you might go to your local town centre and go to a department store or some specialist independents. You might go online and look at some specialist clothing online retailers. So distributors are chosen because they have the right capabilities, the right functionality to sell the product. And the products are sufficiently valuable for people to be prepared to spend a little bit of time and effort shopping for them, but not so valuable that they are prepared to spend a great amount of time and effort. But also, the customer wants to shop around and compare prices, compare availability, compare offerings and styles before making a final decision. The third strategy is exclusive distribution. And as the term suggests, this is used for very, very expensive, high-end, luxury or highly specialist products and services that have a relatively small target market. And so you would not expect to find those widely available. There are many, many fewer Aston Martin car dealerships or Ferrari car dealerships in the world than there are Ford or General Motors, because the target market is so much smaller. So luxury, high-end products are distributed exclusively, partly because the target market is small and partly because they require to be distributed in very, very specialist, high-end distribution outlets and stockets that can support the luxury and prestigious positioning of the brand. Sometimes distribution channels become dissociated from the positioning of the brand. We have an example here from what is known as parallel trading or grey marketing, where Tesco jeans leaked out of the authorised distribution channels of selective distribution, retailers that had been chosen and authorised by Levi's because they created the right image and supported the mid-market but premium mid-market positioning of the jeans, where a pair of jeans might cost 75, 80, 90 or £100. And some of these jeans leaked out of those authorised channels into the British grocery retailer Tesco, and were being sold at a budget price at about £25 or £27, so considerably below the recommended retail price. And Tesco were taken to court by Levi's, and Levi's won. And the court found that the selling of Levi's jeans in this cheap manner, lower price, reduced price manner in Tesco was damaging the equity of the Levi's brand, damaging the intellectual property of Levi's. So the brand equity was considered by the court to be intellectual property, and Tesco were required to stop selling the jeans. So you can see here how there is a direct relationship between the nature of a distribution channel and the positioning of a brand. And there was a lack of congruence, a lack of fit between Tesco and Levi's. And that actually led directly to a court case and to the removal of the Levi's products from Tesco. So if we put this together and look at the product, the distribution channel and the pricing elements of the operational marketing mix and their relationship with brand equity, a study by Yu, Donthu and Lee over 3 product categories and 12 brands found some very interesting things about the ability of the marketing mix elements to support or to erode brand equity. First of all, they found that frequent price promotions were related to low brand equity. And so if you remember, I said that pricing decisions were critically important. And sticking to your price is critically important. So you et al.'s data found quite clearly that the more a brand engages in cut price promotions, money off, extra product, all of the different guises that price promotions can come in, the more likely the brand equity is to be eroded. And why might that be? Well, because low price doesn't signal high quality. And also, if a product is frequently on price promotion, the customer will say, I'm not going to buy it when it's full price. I'm going to wait for it to be on promotion again. And so the long-term ability of the brand to command a price premium, to command an additional profit, becomes damaged. On the other hand, they found that a higher price, a good, strong distribution channel, store image, high distribution intensity, and high advertising spend, although we haven't looked at advertising yet, that's coming next time, were all found to be related to perceptions of quality and also to be associated with brand loyalty, high brand awareness, and strong positive brand associations, and ultimately higher brand equity. So the moral of the story is, don't drop your price, don't muck about with your price, keep price consistent as long as your price is justified given the nature of the product and the values that you are offering to the customer. Beware of price promotions. In the world of fast-moving consumer goods or consumer packaged goods, manufacturers and brand owners have to deal with what are called private labels. These are products which are marketed by retailers or sometimes other members of the distribution channel, such as wholesalers. And sometimes they're referred to as store brands when they have the name of the store itself in their brand, such as the examples here, which come from the British grocery retailer Tesco. The importance of these private labels or store brands does vary by country around the world. In the UK, they are very important because the grocery retailers themselves in the UK are very strong and very powerful. Asda, Sainsbury, Tesco, Morrisons, etc. They all have private labels and they account for a significant share of the grocery market. So they are considered, they are a threat, a very strong threat to brand owners, to brand manufacturers. So how then should these store brands or these private label brands be dealt with? What strategies are there to fight them? Well, basically, there are two different schools of thought here. One school of thought is if you can't beat the store brands, manufacture your product for them. And this is the approach that has been taken, for example, by Heinz in the manufacture of beans. Heinz make their own branded beans, which are priced at a premium in comparison with private label or store brands. But they recognise that many people do not wish to pay price premium for a tin of beans, do not believe that there is a strong reason for doing that, and that the quality of the cheaper products is acceptable, if not as good, then acceptable. And so Heinz dedicate part of their manufacturing capacity to manufacture beans which become own label store brands or private label brands. The other school of thought is if you don't have the other school of thought is if you don't have spare capacity to manufacture for other for retailers so that they can put their own label on product, then don't start to do it because it's a dangerous, slippery slope. And that is the approach taken by a number of other branded goods manufacturers, such as Kellogg's, Coca-Cola, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, etc. Focus on supporting your own brand and don't dedicate your manufacturing capacity to the production of store brands. Another possibility would be to launch what's called a fighter brand. A fighter brand, an example, would be Loves, which was introduced by Procter & Gamble to be a complementary brand in their portfolio against their market-leading brand of diapers or nappies, Pampers. Pampers is a premium product commanding a premium price within the product category. And Procter & Gamble decided that because not all consumers want to pay that premium price and are prepared to pay for the extra quality, instead of losing customers to store brands, they would create their own lower priced brand called Loves, which is not the same quality as Pampers, but for the more price sensitive consumer, the opportunity to buy Loves would at least bring some revenue back to Procter & Gamble rather than losing that revenue. However, in an article in 2009, Mark Ritson set out some very, very compelling arguments against the launch of a fighter brand. He said that fighter brands are likely to cannibalize your own market share. So rather than bringing in new customers to Procter & Gamble, Loves is likely to take customers away from Pampers. Fighter brands are not able to completely destroy or bury the competition. The competition will always be there. Store brands won't go away, and all that happens is you get another brand that clutters up the marketplace when perhaps the money could be better spent focusing on your premium brand. Sometimes the fighter brands don't ever become profitable, so they become almost a sort of a loss leader, not a loss leader, but something that has to be subsidized, if you like, by other brands in the portfolio. They don't necessarily meet customers' requirements. They're not as cheap as a store brand, and they're not as good as the premium brands. And they can be a managerial distraction within an organization. So it's a tricky decision. The fighter brands are often used, but can be problematic. They're not necessarily a recipe for success. So, in summary, the operational marketing mix should be designed to create brand awareness, to build and enhance brand awareness, and to establish the desired brand image. Doing that through the product itself means creating differentiation through added value, through ensuring that your product has particular features that offer particular benefits that the customer cannot get from competing brands, or that there is a feeling that added value is being offered. And remember, it's the customer's perception that is the key. The pricing strategy must be developed carefully. Set the price to support the brand positioning. Avoid discounting, avoid price wars. Don't be afraid of setting a higher price, and don't mess about with price too often through price promotions. Choose distribution channels and channel partners that fit and support the brand's positioning, and choose a distribution intensity that fits and meets the size of the target market. And be ready to cope with store brands or private labels, either by turning your back on them effectively and investing your money in supporting your own brand through dedicating some of your manufacturing capacity to make products that can be sold under a store brand name or private label, or by developing a fighter brand to offer at a lower price alongside your more premium offering. So next time we'll be looking at the role of integrated marketing communications within the brand marketing program. And your reading is a paper by Kevin Keller from 2016, Unlocking the Power of Integrated Marketing Communications. How integrated is your IMC program? But for now, goodbye.